Lectio Divina for the Feast of Pentecost, 31st of May 2020. Today's reading is the Gospel according to St. John, chapter 20, verses 19 to 23. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Come, Holy Spirit, Creator blessed, in our souls take up thy rest. Come with thy grace and heavenly aid, to fill the hearts that thou hast made. Come, Holy Spirit, Creator blessed, in our souls take up thy rest. Come with thy grace and heavenly aid, to fill the hearts that thou hast made. Come, Holy Spirit, Creator blessed, and in our souls take up thy rest. Come with thy grace and heavenly aid, to fill the hearts that thou hast made. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful, and enkindle in them the fires of your love. Send forth your Spirit, and they shall be created, and thou shalt renew the face of the earth. The Gospel according to St. John. In the evening of the first day of the week, the doors were closed in the room where the disciples were for fear of the Jews. Jesus came and stood among them. He said to them, "Peace be with you," and showed them his hands and his side. The disciples were filled with joy when they saw the Lord, and said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father sent me, so am I sending you." After saying this, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. For those whose sins you forgive, they are forgiven. For those whose sins you retain, they are retained." Take a moment now to bring whatever words or phrases stuck with you. Bring those words or phrases before God now in prayer, and ask Him to help us to understand what the message is within those words. She sits like a bird, brooding on the waters, hovering on the chaos of the world's first day. She sighs and she sings, mother in creation, waiting to give birth to all the world will say. In today's Gospel, Jesus appears to his disciples in the upper room. This is the famous Pentecost scene where the disciples are locked away in fear, hiding from the world. It is perhaps 40 or 50 days after the crucifixion of Jesus, their spiritual leader. And Jesus appears to them suddenly. He greets them with a traditional Hebrew greeting. "Peace be with you." He then reminds them of their mission to spread the gospel in the path of sacrifice when he says the words, "As the Father sent me, so I am sending you." This reminds us that the path of Christ can sometimes be difficult, since Christ himself faced difficulty in his mission. However, Jesus does give us the gift of the Holy Spirit, and with the Holy Spirit, all things are possible. We know that the Holy Spirit, the advocate from Christ himself, will help us on our journey and will help us to get round most of the difficulties that we might face as being Christians. Elsewhere in the Gospel, we are told that following Christ is the pathway to peace. To true peace. To a lasting peace. A peace that no one can take from us. We are also told in the Beatitudes that happiness is found where we follow Christ. For example, the Beatitudes tell us, happy are the merciful, happy are the pure of heart, happy are the peacemakers, happy are those who seek justice. Could Jesus perhaps be saying, happy are those who follow Christ and his teachings? Perhaps we can take a moment now to ask God to bless us with this same Holy Spirit that Jesus blesses his disciples. Over earth, resting where she wishes, lighting close at hand or soaring through the skies. She rests in the womb, welcoming each wonder, nourishing potential hidden to our eyes. When Jesus breathes the Holy Spirit upon his disciples, he says, "For those whose sins you forgive, they are forgiven. For those whose sins you retain, they are retained." Reflecting on what Jesus says in the other Gospels and what you know about Jesus and his mission on earth, what do you make of this comment? Particularly the section on retaining people's sins. Could it perhaps be that this is a test? Could the teacher perhaps be testing his pupils to see how much they have been paying attention to his other teachings? For example, Jesus tells his disciples, "How many times must we forgive our neighbours?" We are told not 7, but 77, or in other words, an infinite number of times we must forgive others. Elsewhere in the disciple, and during the crucifixion scene, he gives us another hint. So Jesus' last words on the cross, or perhaps amongst his last words, were, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." He is forgiving the people who have unjustly sentenced him to death. Jesus also warns us in the Gospel not to cast judgment on others, or we may be judged ourselves. If we sum up Christ's mission in a nutshell, we must say that the mission of Jesus is to reconcile man with God the Father. Surely the central purpose of this very mission is mercy and the forgiveness of sins. Perhaps we can take a moment now to ask God to bless us with the grace to forgive those who have offended us. And perhaps we can also ask for the grace of forgiveness from all those who we may have offended in our past. For she is the Spirit, one with God in essence, gifted by the Saviour in eternal love. She is the key, opening the scriptures, enemy of apathy and heavenly dove. Thanks for participating in today's prayer. We wish you a blessed feast of the Pentecost. May God bless you and your friends and your family at this time. Just a reminder that today is the last day in May, and May is typically a time when Catholics honour Our Lady by reciting the Rosary. If you follow the Catholic tradition, perhaps you could say a rosary either by yourself or, if it's possible, with your family over this time, just to honour Our Lady during this blessed month of May. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.